yoga of your life, of your karma. I got closer to God because He came along. And He was in my vision. Now I'm wondering whether my hip got me to God. It's certainly been in my vision. The stroke I had. Mickey Lemley, a filmmaker, he did a film on me, and he called it Fierce Grace. The Fierce Grace. And because I thought of, I got the stroke at night, and they moved me to the hospital, and everybody around me was very dour. And they were terrible looking. My family, my friends, my doctors, they all looked. They discussed that I was going to die. But I didn't know, of course. I'd be the last one to tell. And so after a while, I saw that this stroke elicits in the culture a response. Oh, you've got a stroke. And I said, boy, I must have a real stroke. And on my room in the hospital was a picture of my girl. I put it there. The hospital didn't put it there. And before my stroke, I always felt that He was with me, that He was just always with me. And then after the stroke, I was depressed because I had this stroke was wreaking havoc with my faith. And then I started to look at his picture, and you always had support for me. And there's this yick, this stroke. And I kept putting them together. But I looked at the stroke, and I saw that it was just everybody's word. It didn't have to be yick. It was, yeah, a stroke. This is going to be, I'm going to be stroked. And I'm going to be probably to this, and maybe it'll be something new and something really unbelievable. So I started to call it Fierce Grace. So now I'm trying to get the hip under. I'm having a hip. I have a bionic hip. I knew I was hip, but I didn't know how much. And I'm not done with the hip. Or done with the after effects of their treatments in the urinary system, in the breath, in the these are grace. And it takes me grace to come here and speak when I'm in this much pain. Uma and I are going to speak about Hinduism.
Ram Dass's story about the blue light, Krishna coming in the blue light, reminded me of an experience of my own. And I wanted to share it with you because what's been happening as I sit here and listen to Ram Dass is that I feel Maharaji's presence so strongly. And it was Maharaji who came to me in a blue light. And so I just felt I wanted to share that, even though it's straying from what we had planned to talk about. But in 1974, it was actually right around this time of year. It was 2 days before Thanksgiving. It was a Tuesday, which is Hanuman's Day. And I was living in Davis, California, working at the university there, and very new on the path. I'd read Autobiography of a Yogi and Be Here Now, and was working on the Tao, and all of the requisite texts for opening onto this new path. And I had two friends who were brothers, who were going to a movie together this one night, and I was not going with them, but I lived in a central location between the two of them, so they were going to meet at my apartment and go to a movie together. One of them was an acid dealer. One of them was a pot dealer.
You said, what did you say he was?
He was an acid dealer.
An acid dealer. Thank you.
Who didn't bother with anything but acid. He figured if you want to have the experience, the clear light is the way to go. However, he had told me about this pot that his brother had that had this great reputation. At this point, I was getting up at 5 a.m, doing yoga, chanting, trying to meditate. I was not doing any drugs, wasn't even doing caffeine or anything like that. So I felt really clean, and, they were doing what they were doing. Well, the pot dealer got there first. And, of course, its reputation had preceded it, and he offered me a hit off a joint. So I know I took one hit. And what happened was my mind just went completely gaga. I was in total confusion. I felt this terrible pressure in my heart, as if somebody had taken it and was just squeezing it like that. There was horrible pain in my chest, and I thought, there I was so pure and wasn't doing anything. I was eating vegetarian and, mostly raw foods and being really a good yogi to the best of my knowledge and ability. And I was a mess, and I couldn't even have a conversation with him. I said, I'm going to go outside and get some fresh air. So I walked outside, and our apartment complex we lived in, there were a number of buildings that looked exactly alike, all spread out over this big lawn. So I was walking through just trying to get some fresh air, but really totally freaked out, and got lost because I couldn't recognize my apartment. I mean, that's where my mind was. It was just so messed up. And so finally I made my way back. I recognized something in one of the windows nearby where I lived, and I came in. And my friend was still there. His brother hadn't met him yet. I said, I'm sorry. I can't even sit up and have a conversation with you. I have to go to bed. And so I went to my room, and I thought, okay, I have to meditate. And then I realized, I don't know what meditation is. And I thought, okay, a mantra. I have to just focus on a mantra. I couldn't remember a mantra. I mean, I was just a mess, and my mind was just all over the place. And finally, I just screamed out loud, I'll do anything for God. And everything stopped and got very clear. And there was this sort of it was almost like a rain. Felt like a very light sprinkle. And everything was completely peaceful. My mind was completely quiet. And I opened my eyes, and sitting in the room was Neem Karoli Baba. Full body form. I mean, this is not a dream. This was not a vision. He was sitting there in the flesh. He was bathed in blue light. So the whole room was filled with blue light, but it was coming from him. And I was looking at him, and I noticed that he wasn't speaking out loud, but he was mouthing some words. And I could see that it was a sequence of words, and I understood that I was to repeat it with him. So I looked really closely at his lips and watched, and I realized he was saying, Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. So I started repeating it with him. And as soon as I started repeating this mantra, after a few times, this thing happened like rapid fire. And each one of those, I lived a life. I lived every aspect of the life. I died, I was born again, I lived every aspect of the next life. I died, I was born again, hundreds of them. In real time, this is not seeing a vision out there. I was in every life, in every detail of every life. While this was happening, there were three things going on. I was in the room with Maharaji. I forgot to mention he was sitting in Abhaya Mudra, which dispels fear, this mudra. So I'm sitting in the room at the blue light with Maharaji. My eyes are glued to his lips. He's like this, and we're doing Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I'm living lives. At the same time, I'm just a field of consciousness in which all of this is taking place. After a while, those were over. And he stood up, and there were some other things that happened. It went on for a while, and at some point there I just passed out and was waking up the next morning. And I was so excited, and I wanted to see his picture, so I went to find Be Here Now. I opened it up to the picture of him that says, Neem Karoli Baba Mahasamadhi, September 11th, 1973. I didn't know what that meant. I was afraid of what it might mean, but this was 1974. So I went to find Yogananda's book because I figured that would explain what this word meant, Mahasamadhi, and it did. It meant that Maharaji had left his body more than a year before. But he had been there in the body with me the night before. So, I was absolutely elated and euphoric and totally devastated at the same time. And I wanted to share that. The blue light just reminded me, and it reminded me how Maharaji came to me, and I felt his presence so strongly as Ram Dass was talking. And just to say that Maharaji is always here, so you can always call on him, and he hears you.
That the way Indians say to somebody's died, they left their body. So I was my father's farm. I went to town and I got back, and my father waving a telegram. He said, Your guru has left his bojay. I didn't know what it meant. And a misprint. But I couldn't cry because I identified him with spirit, not with body. And he's been around me ever since he's left his bojay. Yeah. That was a good story. Must have been strong pot.
I was going to say that there are two things that people always say to me. After I tell this story, they always come up and they say, where can I get some of that pot? And the other thing what they say to me is, that was a great dream.
Yeah.
And it wasn't either one of those things.
Oh.
I never had anything, any substance that did that before or since. So I don't attribute it to the pot. I think it was a catalyst, but it was where I was at. And, just the sincerity of that seeking in that moment was what brought that.
I want God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually a nice segue into what we were planning to talk about. We were going to talk about the beauty of the two paths of Bhakti and Vedanta. Bhakti, the path of the heart, and Vedanta, which is one of the paths of the mind. And in Vedanta, they call that the seeker who's just, so crazed for God. They call that person a mumukshu, one who is seeking moksha or liberation or realization of our true self, our true nature. And the image that they give for a mumukshu is someone whose hair is on fire and there's the lake. So your hair is on fire with that desire, that craze desire for God and to know who you really are, and God is the lake, and you're running for it for all you're worth.